Joining us now on the Third and 30 podcast, we are happy to welcome Coach Nick Davis, assistant head coach and defensive coordinator at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, the Fighting Engineers. Coach Davis, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I love talking football, so I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Heck yeah, football is life around here, so happy to have you. Let's dive right in, Coach, and we always like to start off with our guests and kind of talk about your background and your journey, where you come from and how you ended up over at Rose-Hulman. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us, a little bit about yourself and your journey through life and how you ended up where you are now coaching college football.
Yeah, so I started off, I wanted to play college football. I wanted to go look at all the schools in the country that had winning records. Really, I looked at every school in the Midwest that had a winning record because I knew I didn't want to go play 4 years and go to a place that lost. Like winning was important I've never had a losing season. We'll cross our fingers with our shortened COVID season of 7 games we're getting ready to have, but whether I was a coach or a player. So that's always been something that's been important to me is if you're going to pour all this time into it, I want to be successful. Obviously, it takes everyone to do that. So I looked at all the schools in the Midwest. Monmouth College, a little Division III school in Illinois, was a good fit for me. I went there. D-end on day one, thought I was this great 5 technique, never played anything other than the C-gap or the D-gap. And then on day 4, we didn't have a 3 technique, and they scrapped the whole 4-3 defense, went to a 3-4 defense. Next thing I know, I'm ripping into the D-gap and the A-gap and a bunch of stuff. But I think that was pretty cool because that helped me create my philosophy of my coaching, because over the next 4 years, we were able to put in multiple fronts. We got into 4-down looks out of, whether it was 4 or 3 defensive linemen personnel. And I saw how it affected teams. And we were doing that in 2006, 7, and 8, I think, before a lot of smaller colleges were doing those sort of things. So I then graduated. A lot of kids, I was a physical education major, so a lot of kids went on to be teachers. I had a bad experience with a practicum where the kids were just walking around the gym and the gym teacher didn't care. So not that it's a bad thing on the profession, because I'm sure if I would have went to a different school, I would have a different experience. But I was like, I don't know. I really had a great experience coaching college. I'm going to try this. So I did an internship at Western Illinois with strength conditioning. I did one with University of Michigan with their strength and conditioning. That parlayed to being a graduate assistant at an NAIA school out in Kansas, Ottawa University. I was there for 2 years. I was this D-line guy. I thought I was going to be the best D-line coach in the country. The D coordinator said, "You're going to coach corners with me. I'm the safeties coach. D-line. I'm going to teach you the secondary." The next year, he let me coach the linebackers kind of by myself. And after 2 years of being a graduate assistant at a small college, I had a whole picture of the defense. So I then, getting ready to graduate, went on, interviewed at different places. Rose-Hulman had a defensive line job. I was super excited. I'm going to go coach D-line. And got down, the head coach called me and said, "Our running backs coach left today too, and we have you and this other guy, our final 2 candidates. Would you be interested in being our running backs coach and doing some special team stuff for us?" I was like, "I don't know a lot about offense. Let me think about it." Looked up on the roster. The running back was a returning All-American. So I was like, I think I can coach this kid, which was really cool. And I'm very thankful for Brian White, who was our offensive coordinator at the time, to take a chance on a guy that didn't know anything about offense. And he coached our offensive line. He got me coached up on running backs. And then as a young running backs coach, he made sure I knew about offensive line play. Our wide receivers coach at the time, Chris Scheit, was a former Division I coach. And I really took a lot from him because I knew nothing about really offense other than what I knew as a defensive player. So learning that whole side of the football was awesome. And I became the special teams coordinator after a year. Did that for 3 years. Our D coordinator ended up leaving. And Coach Sokol came and talked to me. Being a Division III staff, we have very few full-time positions. And came down and talked to me about what I'd want to do. And he offered me the defensive coordinator. So I went from being the running back special teams coordinator over to the defense side of the football. And then I've been that for the last 5 years. I coached linebackers for the first 2 years here. the first 3 years, defensive backs for the last 2. And then finally, for the first time in my history, I'm actually a D-line coach, just because when you have a lot of graduate assistants on your staff and new guys come in and they leave, I want to coach the spot that they feel the most comfortable, or that they don't feel the most comfortable in. So we got a guy that's a DB and a linebacker expert. So I came in and I'm coaching our defensive line, which I'm super excited for the first time in my career coaching the defensive line. And there's so much things I've learned as a coordinator that I'm like, oh, I want to bring this to the D line that I wouldn't have if I would only coach D line the last 11 years.
It's interesting how much flexibility you've highlighted there of, hey, my mind was I'm going here. I'm going to be the best D-line coach in the country. And next thing you know, you're coaching running backs. That is phenomenal. And I love the flexibility, because I think sometimes when we're talking to people, whether it's a football player, a football coach, or someone in the business world, sometimes they're not understanding the need for flexibility, especially when you're so new in the field. Be versatile in what you can do. Now, Coach, I'm an offensive person. That's kind of my forte. I have coached DBs before, so I've done that for a couple years as well. I'm curious to take you back to your offensive days just for a moment. Yep. We won't press the envelope too much there. When you were the running back coach, what kind of offense was it? I'm dying to know.
Yeah, so we were 11 personnel. Best way to describe it would be a Penn State type spread offense where that 11 personnel tight end could be attached, he could be extended. There's ways that we could put that guy as the number 1 receiver if we wanted. He could be a sniffer, he could be a fullback. So that was kind of what we were doing. And Brian White, when he was the offensive coordinator, we ran more plays in the country than any other team. And that was when Chip Kelly was at Oregon. We were averaging, I think it was 93 plays a game or something crazy like that, trying to snap it as fast as possible.
Wow.
So that's when like tempo was like first in, and we were trying to be all in. And now people are using tempo as a tool, so it's not all fast all the time. But that was our mindset. We wanted to snap the ball. We wanted to get into the fourth quarter and make conditioning a factor. And there was lots of games where maybe in the first half we didn't wear a team down, but you would see in the third and the fourth quarter the D-line tapping out and running off the field, and them sending a line change, and us just continue to, inside zone may have not worked in the first quarter, but in the fourth quarter, a lot of times it was going for 5-6 yards. So it was stay the course and see the vision.
And as a defensive-minded coach, were you very cognizant to that third and fourth quarter when you saw the defenders getting really tired? Was that just drawing your attention instantly to relay that to the other coaches? Was that a big thing for you?
Not really. What I think Coach White really got from me was the fact that I could watch a play and kind of know where everyone on the defense ended up, all 11 guys, what the coverage structure was going to be, if they were moving, because I was in the press box, if they were moving from odd and even fronts, or what was stunting and all that stuff. So that was something that was more natural to me, especially if you're coaching just the running back. If you're in the press box, like, hey, he's making hidden holes, having great runs, he's making his right pass protection, all those sort of things. So I was more relied on game day of what are they doing, how are they different. And Coach White did a great job. It was in the first 10 plays in our openers, we had questions that I had to answer. It was, how do they line up to 3-by-1? Was that what we expected? Like, I was writing things down, and then we'd communicate after those first 10 plays. And then he would kind of change his, plan kind of based off of some of that information that we gathered. So that was super important. And I think that was something I excelled at because I'd played defense before. I had understood it. I'd coached the secondary. I'd coached the linebackers before.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. Coach, I want to dive in to a really big topic and talk COVID-19 for a minute. And we obviously know through our economy, through our social interactions, through the way that classes are even working, there's been so much alteration of what we would normally do in life. Football, as the three of us know, because we're very invested into football and spend a lot of time with it, football has been turned upside down in the last, I'll call it almost the last year now. It's been at least 10 months. I'm taking a guess that for you, this happened in the middle of off-season workouts and recruiting season as we hit, let's just, for loose term purposes, let's say sometime between probably March 10th and March 20th is when, depending on what end of the country you're in, everything pretty much shut down in 2020. I would love to hear your perspective on how COVID-19 has altered this particular season. You guys are about to play a spring season, as you alluded to us off air, and you know, this sounds foolish even coming from me because we host this podcast and I talk football all the time. You're the first coach we've actually talked to that is about to do a spring season, so this is groundbreaking on the podcast here. We have actually not talked to anyone yet that did not do a fall season as planned originally. So walk us through how on earth you prepare suddenly for a spring season, and what effects has this change had on coaches, players, and recruiting? And then what are you most excited about jumping into this?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we've done is thinking outside the box on different things. Like, I think that's something I pride myself on. I went and I had a liberal arts education. I think the biggest thing I take away from my liberal arts education is being able to think outside the box, think about what's maybe not best for me, but what's best for the most. So I think that's really helped us. Now, we were already recruiting the whole country of phone calls. We weren't driving to California or flying to California to go to high schools and different things. So social media was huge for us for recruiting. And there's things that we did with virtual visits that I'm like, you know, if I'm a kid from California, the first time I visit a school, why would I drive 30 hours to come visit a school? Like, I would go to a virtual visit now. So there's things that we're going to do going forward, like, hey, maybe the first interaction we have with this kid should be a virtual visit, and that should drive him to campus when COVID's over and we're allowed to get safely on campus. So that's kind of how we handled
That's
recruiting.
awesome.
But I think we took an advantage of, we have more meeting time with this kids than ever. So we did online, you know, Zoom stuff, teaching the playbook. I think our kids are more prepared for what we want to do. Some coaches I've talked to said, "Oh, we're really scaling back what we're doing." My install is the biggest it's ever been because I've had 10 months, right, for the returning kids, and then for the freshmen, I've had since August when they got on campus to install
Oh,
all this.
wow.
Now, are you getting all the reps that you would out on the field? No, but if you can handle it from an install and you can get them mental reps and you can show them video and you can do all that stuff and they take it in, I've been pleasantly surprised. We've done our 3 installs. We installed our whole entire defense, and the MAs actually out on the field is very limited from what you would think. If you installed 69 coverages and 150 different movements and 40 fronts, like, you would think, oh crap, they can't handle it because we haven't practiced. Well, I think coaches are just scared. I think in some aspects, less practice, more meeting, more walkthroughs, that could be better. Like, obviously you got to get out on the field and do the reps, but I think that's what we've taken it, being like, hey, this is awesome, man. We just get more time to teach. And at the end of the day, you're as a teacher. So if you can't teach online, man, you're in trouble.
Absolutely. Do you, Coach P, were you about to ask something?
I was just gonna comment on that because I think it's so apparent that we've seen these days of the the either lack of knowledge of how to online teach or the lack of will to want to online teach. And you know, I commend you guys for staying on it because I've seen a lot of programs that during that time, no online meetings, no coaches meetings, and then they end up playing a fall season and you kind of see the fall on that. So, I mean, the patience it takes for you guys to wait till spring season is amazing. And I mean, and it goes back to your flexibility. I mean, I feel like for you, it almost fits in, you know, having a time like this. I'm sure you're one of the better people to be a part of this because you know how to be flexible, think on the fly, and on a snap, be able to think out of the box. Is that something kind of that you've always had, or is that something you've had to like teach yourself as you've grown up?
No, I mean, I think you're kind of set in your ways sometimes as a coach, but then you got to just reevaluate and be like, are we doing this because I've always done it? Or, you know, we're a program that has done Skelly and inside run like everyone. I'm like, at the end of the day, like, should we just play football? Should we do more group sessions? Because everyone knows Skelly's not realistic. My linebackers are going to be flying out. They're not going to get the read. Inside run, everyone knows that, you know, you may put a draw or a pass or one play in there, but they're coming downhill. well, are we teaching these kids for what it's going to be like on Friday night? Like, again, you got to limit some reps. You want to take away some hits and do different things. But man, to be good at football, I think you got to play the game. So, just thinking outside the box a little bit in terms of that, I think things that has helped. And it's just things I've learned. Um, why do one-on-one pass rush rep? And every D-line coach in the country is probably going to kill me, but we have to as a unit. So I like 5-on-4 pass rush. And, it doesn't have to be always stunts, but our kids have to understand how they rush as a 4-man unit if we're rushing 4. So I think there's tools and different things and drills you can run, but at the end of the day, let's play as much football realistic drills as possible. And obviously that's limited us with COVID and being out on the field, but I think you can do some of that stuff virtually as well. And I think the key to being a great teacher online is you got to be an over personality, like, because the kids are like, oh, it's online. Like, if you show up as a coach, you're like, okay, we're in stall 1. The linebacker goes, the kids are going to fall asleep. Like, you got to be over the top. Like, hey guys, this, like, that's what I've learned about this virtual world is you got to be crazier than what you would be in person for the kids to, be like, oh yeah, get excited. Like, I'm on my computer watching Coach Davis. Like, we're going to have a good time.
It's true. I mean, I coach I coach high school baseball as well. And we have had to do virtual workouts. So I got 40 kids on my screen and got my speaker, I'm playing music. They see me kind of dancing a little bit. And this is stuff I would not do if I was in person. So yeah, I mean, it's so true. And you have to step out of your comfort zone a little bit. And that's part of the game. So that's awesome to know that I'm not the only one being crazy on camera with the kids.
Coach Davis, I have a comment and then a question. My comment is I love how you've highlighted some of the Skelly sessions, because I know my wide receivers, especially the ones that play slot and hybrid positions, whenever we go inside run game, they say, Coach, I mean, the linebackers and the safeties are not taking reads at all. All they're doing is crashing down. I'm not even getting to explode off the line for my first 3 steps like I always would, and then come inside for my block, because they're not taking the regular read steps. All they're doing is crashing down. This is pointless. Let's just go team. And I get that from my wide receivers. Don't tell an O-line coach that, though. My wide receivers will come over to me after that and say, we might as well go team so we can at least get a realistic look. So I really love how you said that. And then, so a question for you is this. I've noticed it. I have a personal philosophy of when we get on the video chats, because we're doing meetings once a week online with the kids as well. Plus I do work ones. And we have a philosophy of turn your cameras on. Don't you'll get kids will get on there. You'll have 40 kids on a meeting or 20 kids on a meeting. They'll all have cameras off. First thing we say is turn cameras on. Let's be present together. Can you walk me through what is your program's philosophy on that?
Yeah, we want the cameras on. I think the weirdest thing is you do clinics. Like, I've done a bunch of online clinics where people and everyone, hey, turn your mic off, all that stuff. Like, I kind of don't want that. Like, I want someone to be able to, obviously I don't want them feeding their dog or their dog barking, but my dog barks all the time in the background. Like, you got to understand we're people. But just sitting in silence drives me crazy. Because even if you're together, you're going to see your kids chatter and different things, and you're hoping that they're chattering about checks and stuff, but and they may not always be, and you got to get in their ass a little bit. But no, yeah, I try to ask them as many questions. Like, okay, we're our Panama here, okay, tackle, what's your thing, and have them talk as much, like quiz them. They need to be on edge that I got to be paying attention because Coach Davis is going to call on me, and I got to answer the question. So they got to be kind of like, oh, when's my 2 questions Zoom session? When's that going to be? If not, I think if the cameras are off, they tune you off. They go eat dinner. They're playing Fortnite or Call of Duty, whatever these kids are doing. I have some nieces, which I think's me because they tell me the things that's happened at their high school and their middle schools of, yeah, you can totally tell that Cody was playing Fortnite in the background because he's, off screen with his hands like here. So we try to eliminate that as much as possible. Luckily, we're at an engineering school, so my kids, if they're doing something crazy, they're doing thermodynamics homework and stuff. But
wow, that's a little different.
Yeah, they're not messing around. It's usually academic. I'm like, hey, get off your calculators, not your cell phones, and pay attention here. This is my time.
I don't have that problem.
I was gonna say that seems like a pretty decent problem to have compared to Fortnite and Call of Duty.
I will say we did a round table at our last meeting, and all of my crew is on the honor roll, so I'm very proud of that. We went around, we did GPAs, and I was extremely proud of that, especially because we've been, and Coach, I don't know what you're experiencing at the college. We've been to end the semester, we were all at home, and then for the last 2 weeks we've been hybrid. So 2 days a week they're in the classroom, 3 days a week they're at home. So I'm very proud of them to be maintaining honor roll status, and that was a lot of kids that had that going. So let's flip the script a little bit, and I think if I'm reading everything correctly online, because I've been following you for a number of years online, and if I'm reading it correctly, this is kind of your own venture as we dive into. You're the inventor of the spread defense, and you have this Twitter account that has some phenomenal stuff. I'm an offensive guy, so I like to look at it so I can see what you're scheming against us. It's a great learning opportunity for all coaches, and you're the inventor of the spread defense. I really want to know, how did this come about? Kind of walk us through what it is, and then what you talked a little bit in the beginning. What sparks your drive to be a defensive coach?
Yeah. So first thing when I took over, like again, I was a running back and I was a special teams coordinator, so I needed some sort of buy-in to the kids. Like, Coach Sokol, you just promoted our running backs coach to be our defensive coordinator. Like, so I needed the kids to get excited. I needed to buy in. And I took what we were doing on offense with that 11 personnel hybrid tight end, and I brought that over to defense, and that's our Bob linebacker. So we can put that kid on line of scrimmage. We can put him at depth as a linebacker. In certain years, like that kid was a really good coverage guy, so we could put him out of the box and do some coverage thing. So for us, that Bob is our hybrid guy that makes everything work. And we want to create matchups. Like, you as an offensive coach, you want to put your best guy, if you're going to run a slot fade versus cover one, you want to put him either to the field or the boundary versus the worst coverage defender. Okay. For me, I want to eliminate that with our defensive backs as much as possible. But still, you may have a better player. You may have a better quarterback. I'll tip my cap if we're playing man. Like, I got to call a different call. But in the box game, what I've found is generally, and some teams do this, but your left tackle is always going to be your left tackle. Your left guard is always going to be your left. Some will do like field boundary or strength weakness. I know some high school teams that do that. Some triple option teams will do that. But generally, those guys are locked in one spot. Well, if you play a right and left defense, I think you're wrong in some regard because you've locked your kids in to right and left or field boundary. So what we do is that Bob becomes a hybrid player, and we can use that guy to create a ton of matchups. Now, he needs to be a really good football player. I say you can either highlight or hide that kid. So we can put that kid in the best spots, whether it's a 5 technique, a 3 technique, an apt-up linebacker rushing the B gap, the C gap, or we could hide that kid and put him against, their worst guy or their best guy on a pack play so he gets blocked. So we're able to move that piece around, and we can create matchups with our 6 guys in the box. So that's what kind of the spread defense philosophy became. And if you look at our statistics, generally in a 10-game season, we'll have a kid that leads our team with 65 tackles. And the last starter on defense has 25. So our kids are anywhere from 25 to 65 tackles. We're spreading the statistics around because we are kind of a one-gap defense. We're not going to have a kid that's a middle linebacker where we say, oh, D-line, soak up all the blocks, and we're going to let this kid run. He's going to have 150 tackles. Our kids are all trying to do their part. Now, as a coordinator, I can put our best guy in the best situation so he can end up with 17 and a half sacks, lead the country in TFLs, and do different things like that. So that's kind of the basic philosophy. And it's, again, trying to do as much as possible. I want you in Cleveland, Ohio to be like, oh crap, are they playing quarters this week? Are they playing cover 1, cover 3, cover 2? Are they 3-4 down? And then you're just like, man, it's too much to do everything I want to do. I want to simplify. So that's kind of the huge philosophy of what we want to do here, is be multiple enough that we have enough tools in our toolbox to kind of handle as much as possible. And then it's on me to make sure we're using the right tools each week.
Coach, being the inventor of something in football, can be, I'm sure it draws a lot of attention. I'm curious as to what the kind of, what sort of feedback you've gotten from this number one spread defense, good and bad. What is some of the feedback from other coaches? How do they feel about this new style of defense?
Yeah, so I think some people either really buy in and want to do it. There's several high school coaches in the country that have taken what I've done and they're like, you're super crazy with having 85,000 different fronts, but we're going to simplify it for our level. And there are certain guys that just think, oh, our kids aren't smart enough. Like you can only do that because you got a kids with 30 ACTs. And we teach things in buckets, and whether you have a 30 ACT or a 13, I think you can learn it. I think the kids with a 30 ACT, they're going to learn it a lot faster than a kid with a 13 ACT. But if you tell a kid with a 13 ACT that he lines up outside because the word owl starts with an O, and you tell him that an owl is a bird and bird's a 3 down front, like it's just the teaching process. I think those kids are going to be able to learn that. Just my kid with 30 ACT may pick it up the first time. A kid with a 13 ACT 2.0 that doesn't necessarily care may not get it the first time, but as soon as it clicks, like, oh yeah, Al does have an O, I'm outside. Al's a bird, it's a 3 down front. So we try to make it simple. Like we don't use there's no Nick Saban terminology in our defense. There's no Brett Venables. Like it is things we've created ourselves to make it, put it in categories that we don't confuse the kids and we don't break the rules.
That's really neat, actually. And I even can get that. And I'm not even a D-line guy.
Yeah,
we say toucan to go inside the tackle. So that toucan's a bird. Like sometimes it's because there's, some animal they've never even heard of. Like we had an albatross one time. That's a bird that starts with an A. We used to call the tailback an A in our system. So they had to set the front to the albatross. But golfers kind of got that. But if you have no kids that have ever golfed before, then
that's funny.
Tough sell.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate you highlighting that because I know in football, it's, it can be difficult when you're the inventor of a new style. I know there can be a lot of pushback. And I know it takes a lot of confidence to be like, you know what, I believe in this. I'm going to run with it, whether you like it or not. This is the way we're going to do it. And I think that's pretty awesome. And, Coach, we highlighted COVID-19 and, I'm sure that was a lot of adversity throughout that and a lot of tough days, tough hours, tough practices that having to go through. But, our mantra here at the podcast is #drive. Drive is an acronym and it's determination, rigor, inspiration, victory, and excellence. And it's kind of our way of guiding, ourselves, whoever's listening through adversity and through tough times and kind of finding your drive to keep going. And, we ask every guest this, and I think it's probably my favorite part of any conversation we have is in your entire life. And it could be in your football career or in your young life, or, it could be even this COVID-19 season. What has been the biggest adversity you faced? And, more importantly, how did you overcome that adversity? And what did you do to learn from it and move forward from it? I know a lot of times adversity is one thing, but how we overcome it is such a big part of it. So if you don't mind, highlight, one of those moments and how you got through that.
Yeah. So when I was a high school senior and we were getting ready, getting ready to go play college football. My father actually passed away, and the summer going in, it was kind of sudden and all that crazy stuff. And we actually had his funeral, and I drove up to Monmouth College that day after the funeral and started football camp. And that was kind of my therapy of, and that's I love this game of football because that helped me through one of the toughest times of my life. And it was just lining up, going to work, and doing the best I could. And I'll never forget, that therapy. And then my teammates, and none of those really kids knew, the coaches knew, but they didn't treat me different. They weren't like, oh, Nick, you got your butt kicked there. Like it was, they were hard on me. Hey, you got to rip into the B gap. You got to do that. So I think that was one of the biggest things where, hey, you lose someone you love, but that same day that you put that guy in the ground, you go and you start your job, and in this case, I was a player. You go up there and you work your butt off and you go for your goals. So I think that's one thing is, man, the game of football, there's going to be so much failure. All right. There's obviously, hopefully, a lot of success if you're a good player or your team's good, but it teaches you how to fail. But I love the football coaches that you bounce back, whether you got beat by 50 or you won by 20. I feel like you learn more lessons when you get beat by 50 than when you win by 20. But that if you play on Friday, if you meet on that Saturday, that Sunday, it's hey, we're moving on. There's a new opponent. There's something to that in this game that teaches you for the rest of your life that, man, you may get fired from your job, but don't soak it in. The next day, attack it. Or, something didn't go right and you thought you were going to get a promotion, all that sort of stuff. Like, you just got to keep working. And I think that's something this game really teaches. And I think that learning it as an 18-year-old, I think has helped me for the rest of my career.
That's awesome. I appreciate you highlighting that. And it's so true. Football is a game of life. I tell that, it's the ultimate team sport, and it teaches you life indirectly, directly. I mean, you get knocked down, you got to get back up next play, and that's life, and like you said it perfectly. If you let those bad things soak in, it snowballs. And so you just got to, just like football, you got to get up, get ready for the next play. And so that's incredible. And that's it's so amazing that you brought up football and therapy and how therapeutic it can be, because when you think of football, tough man sport, crazy guys running around, button heads, and you don't really think about therapy. Seems like such a peaceful feeling, and and it's so true. A coach, player, no matter what it is, when you're out on that field, I mean, any of your problems kind of just wash away. You feel like when you're really passionate and bought in. Coach, you highlighted Coach Brian White. I'm sure he's a big mentor to you throughout your career and life in general. I wanted you to go into some of the other mentors in your life, and mentors, leaders, whether you knew them or watched them from afar, admired them from afar. Who were some of the mentors that you looked up to, and what did they teach you?
Yeah, so kind of my first in the coaching world, Josh Homolka, he was our defensive coordinator at Ottawa. He's now a head high school coach out in Kansas. And I think I learned more about just life and how to run a program more than X's O. And he was a great coach. All right. I'm not trying to say that. Like, we were on the cutting edge of scheme and all that stuff. But he taught me how to treat players. He taught me how to think, and I had this liberal arts education. But when you're out in Kansas, sometimes it's ultra conservative and everyone thinks it's old school. And he was a political science major at Kansas, and he kind of, for that area, was the guy that thought outside the box. So you get two guys like that together that are kind of thinking outside the box, and everyone else is super ultra conservative. I thought that was special, and we learned more things about, don't do it just because everyone else does something. Like, we'd go down and meet with different people, and we met with John Levra, which was a Pitt State connection with him, and he's one of the best defensive line minds in the history of the football. And we got done with the meeting, and he's like, you probably learned a lot of great stuff. Some things are going to fit for us, and some things aren't. And that's up to you to decide and to learn, and you'll learn by failure and different things. So he's one of the greatest influences of me being like, don't ever not do something because you think it's too hard or you think it's too expensive. Like, oh, we can't play this coverage because it's too expensive. Well, it's a challenge for you as a coach. Can you teach it? And if the kids don't get it, you failed as a coach. So those are things that I always will evaluate. And then, Brian White, who's taught me everything I know about offense. I just texted him actually yesterday, hey, what would you do to this front? And he responded back, and I'm like, yep, that's what I'd want, because that's what I figured. And you're a great O-line coach, I think one of the best in the country, and one of the best offensive minds in the country. You've been around 3 Division I programs, and to have those resources at your hand to kind of remind you that there is more to X's and O's and different things. It's how you treat people and different things. So I think those have been the biggest 2 mentors. Obviously, Coach Stokel giving me a chance, giving a running backs coach a chance to coordinate a defense has been huge, and teach me how to handle high academic kids, because I didn't know anything about recruiting high academic kids. So I think there's outside mentors that scheme and different things, but at the end of the day, like, you don't know every second of your life. Like, I think you need a mentor that you've seen them live it and do it. So I think that's good.
Coach, I want to clarify. Is this the coach Brian White? That's the running backs coach at Colorado State.
No, so there's like 18 Brian Whites in the country.
I thought so.
He's the offensive line coach at Hampton out in
Okay.
Virginia.
Okay. That's
So,
good. Clarified.
He always gets confused by that guy. So if he hears this, he'll be fired up.
Sorry, Coach White. I knew it was you the whole.
Are you the Brian White from Colorado State?
I knew it was you the whole time, Coach White. I knew.
Maybe we can get Coach White on in the future.
Yeah, exactly, right? Coach, I got one more for you, and it kind of this is this kind of came to me as we were discussing. As a coach for a smaller program in the country, a lot of us. I went to me and Coach Chaddock. We went to the AFCA convention last year, and we're around so many coaches. I'd never been around so many coaches in my life, and it was just amazing to really see how many people are in this profession and at so many different levels. What is your advice for a young player, a young high school coach, a kid in college that is aspiring to become a coach? A lot of us are like, I'm going to be the coach at a D1 school, big time. And you've obviously you have a love for the game and you have a passion for it. So obviously, D1 may be a big goal for you, but in the end, you want to coach football and it doesn't matter where you're at for the most part. So what is your advice for a young kid wanting to kind of get to that college football profession and want to reach that goal? Because I know it's difficult and I know it's competitive and a lot of kids don't necessarily know how to get there. And so I want you to, if you don't mind, give your best piece of advice to a kid kind of interested in that.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is you got to work your butt off. You got to be willing to take any task. You got to be the ultimate right-hand man for the head coach. At the end of the day, obviously Coach Sokol thought that I had the direction of the program best at heart, and he was, felt comfortable with promoting me to the job because I worked hard and I'd do whatever he asked. Like, you got to be ultimately loyal, and I think that's the biggest thing. And as you're loyal, you're working your butt off to get to that next opportunity. And then a lot of people say it's about who you know, which there's definitely a lot of truth to that. I didn't have a lot of football connections. I went to a school, Monmouth College, that wasn't producing college football coaches every single year. Every coach I had stayed at Monmouth College for 10 years until our head coach, Steve Bell, actually went to Augustana and kind of split up the staff a little bit. But I didn't have a ton of college connections out there in the world. So you work your butt off, you try to make those. And I think it's a little bit about who knows you. 5 years ago, no one knew Nick Davis or spread defense, but I think now there's a lot more people that know me, which has helped. So you get out there and you market yourself, you market your program. I think those are things that I've done well, that a lot of people know Rose-Hulman football because of the good word of mouth that we've tried to spread. And a lot of people know about the spread defense and me because I've spread it out there. If I just kept it to myself, no one would know it. So I've made so many connections in this profession because I put myself out there. And I'm actually a pretty shy person that doesn't like to go out of my comfort zone. And you'd probably think, oh, this is crazy. But this college football profession has made me to be outgoing, to do these things where I got to get out and I got to go talk in front of thousands of people, or, if you're at a clinic or something, 30 people in the background, that I think is a special, unique opportunity. And I think that's what's cool about what you guys are doing. You're getting, not only great coaches across the country out there, you're getting yourself out there and out there. So I think that's huge, that people got to know who you are. And then you as that coach need to take that relationship and build on it. Because at the end of the day, it's someone's going to promote you or give you a job because you work hard and someone else refers you. So I think those are the big things. If you're lazy and you're always dreaming and scheming, but you're never doing anything, I think it's going to be tough in this profession.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm sure it's the same thing with recruiting. I'm sure for kids out of high school, I'm sure you would suggest kids to put themselves out there. I think a lot of times in high school, kids are expecting schools to come to them, whereas it's the opposite. And I think you highlighted that even for a player wanting to play college ball is you got to get yourself out there. You got to step out of your comfort zone and you got to, kind of sell yourself a little bit. And it's so true to what you're speaking. I think it goes for, if you want to be a coach, got to be a servant leader and loyal. And I think it's the same thing. It's all about putting yourself out there and getting out of your comfort zone. So I'm glad you highlighted that. Coach, do you have something to add, Coach Chaddock?
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things I really like that you highlighted, though, is earlier you highlighted failure is a part of our learning process and putting ourselves out there and not being afraid of that we have to take chances. And then I love how you just wrapped it all together by saying we've got to go work our butt off if we want to get advancement, because we live in such a microwave society now where people just think, hey, I put together this one little clip, I'm going to put it on YouTube, or I'm going to put it on Twitter, or I'm going to put it on Instagram. I'm going to be an instant sensation and I'm going to make millions of dollars. Or, hey, you know something, I did awesome for you for a month. Don't I deserve to be a D1 running back coach now? And that's just not how it works. And I really like how you've been able to highlight not only the hard work it takes, what that hard work got you. Because you didn't all of a sudden become the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach. That took a lot of work and a lot of effort over years, not just this instant society that we live in today. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the table, because we preach it all the time. And you know this as well as we do. When kids or coaches hear the same thing from us all the time, sometimes oh yeah, that's just coach saying that. He always says that. No, Coach Davis says it too. It's for real now.
Well, and I think I didn't really highlight it, but you got to treat people good too. Like, obviously, as a coordinator and the assistant head coach, sometimes there's a fine line of how do you, how are you hard on someone, but then how do you love them after that? Like, I don't know. Like, and I think you got to figure every person's a little different. Everyone responds a little differently. And that's something I've struggled with. Like, how can I treat this kid to get him to respond? Can I be harder on him than another kid or a coach or different things like that? But at the end of the day, knowing that they care about you, that's obviously the biggest thing. And you can only show that you care about somebody by actually showing that you care about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Coach, you highlighted so many great things, and we want to let you get back to your busy schedule. You got a season to prepare for. And a lot of us are sitting here saying season's over. We got schools out there getting ready to play football. So, Coach Nick Davis, we appreciate you joining us on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time. Good luck this season. Go get them out in the field, hit hard, play crazy, run around like a bunch of madmen out there, and go get some W's. And really appreciate you taking the time out here.
Thanks for having me. And if anyone ever wants to get a hold of me, reach out to me. I'll get back to you, and I'll get you anything you need.
Appreciate it, Coach.
That's
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach.